Nicholas Cota, and I'm going to be giving an overview of CEE300 as an entire course. First, I'm going to be talking about some of the highlights of this class, starting with the Citicorp case. So the Citicorp case was a good job of both introducing the ethics of engineering, but also forcing us to really think about what truly is ethical. It taught us that not every situation is black and white, and that a good outcome does not necessarily imply good intentions. This is important to consider when you're becoming an engineer, because your decisions affect not only you and your company, but also the lives of the public. Next, I'm going to be talking about the class structure in general, as it pertains to how the material was presented and how we learned. The mixture of plenary and parallel sessions allowed for flexibility in both the schedule and in how the material was presented. For topics more suited for collaboration, the class could split off into smaller groups to help facilitate group work. For topics that required a more direct approach, the plenary sessions allowed for the whole class to be addressed. We either met in Core 174 for plenary sessions, or any number of locations such as the libraries on campus for our parallel sessions. Next, and my final highlight, is going to be the technical reports. The technical reports help the students in three huge ways. First, they help to facilitate and encourage teamwork, which is essential in engineering and really any profession. It also helped refine our professional writing skills, an often overlooked skill for an engineer to have. Finally, it allowed us to practice our finance skills, which is helpful not only for our professional lives, but also our personal ones, as many big financial decisions were covered in the technical reports. Moving on, we're going to be talking about some of the less than perfect aspects of the class, starting with the Pisces game. The Pisces game was supposed to make a statement on sustainability and how people react to scarcity in resources, and in this regard it really did succeed. However, the game was so haphazardly thrown into the class's lap that it ended up being a complete train wreck that offered little in terms of education. This perhaps is the only part of the class that I think should be thrown altogether, because it ultimately was ineffective in its execution, but also just left a lot of students frustrated with the lack of structure. Next, I want to talk about how finances were taught in the class, not necessarily what we learned, but the amount of time was spent on them. They were supposed to be an important part of this course, and the exams and technical reports certainly reflected that, because they were centered around finances for the most part. If this was the case, then finance should have been taught and focused on for a larger portion of the class. It was taught over just a couple of weeks, and yet, as I said before, both the technical reports and an entire page on the exam was about finance. So that's a huge portion of the grade that is put on something that is touched on only relatively briefly. Next, and finally on the lowlights, we have compulsory Twitter participation. Twitter participation really does sound like a good thing, as it forces the class to think outside the course about the material being presented and to share those ideas with one another. However, to put it bluntly, social media is simply not for everyone. Some people are uncomfortable sharing their opinion on social media, which I understand to be the point of using Twitter, is to share the ideas with one another, but one being uncomfortable with using social media should not negatively affect their grade. Another point is the sheer volume of required tweets would be very difficult to reach, even if you like using Twitter. 100 tweets over the course of 14 weeks is a lot to ask. And so finally, I'm going to leave you with some suggestions that I think would help improve the course greatly. The most important thing that I have to suggest to this course is that the communication between the UGTAs and Dr. Seeger needs to be improved. Often it felt like the requirements for the assignments got lost in translation, and the UGTAs would tell the class one thing on Twitter just to have Seeger swoop in and correct them when they either misunderstood what he had to say or simply just didn't know. If a clear understanding is established, then the UGTAs would be able to operate more autonomously and be more effective in their job, leaving Seeger to focus on whatever else he needs to focus on to make the class better. Second, I would suggest that the information pertaining to this class be consolidated to just 1 or 2 locations. Currently, there are 4 main places that students need to go to get the full information on the course: CEE300.com, CritViz, Twitter, and Box. Oftentimes, the material presented on these 4 websites was redundant, and given the nature of the course, being given the runaround was just frustrating and often outweighed any benefits that these individual sites offered. Third, the course should place a greater emphasis on in-class participation. As I mentioned earlier, social media is not every student's forte, and many students would be more eager to participate in class if given the option between in-class participation or Twitter participation. You could give the students an option to reach that 100 tweet goal if they really love social media and tweeting is their thing, or you could give a set number of in-class questions and or answers that they should strive for to meet that participation goal. Flexibility is an important thing to keep in mind when making a course like this, where flexibility is important in so many other aspects of the course, that student participation should be another one. Finally, you should either extend the importance of Colby A and conation through the end of the course, or reduce its focus or get rid of it altogether. Colby A was built up to be one of the very core values of this course, with the first several weeks either directly spent exploring it or making mention to it. Then the first test came along, and there was a whole page devoted to it, which seemed to support this claim that Colby A was, in fact, a central part of this course. However, directly following the second exam, conation was almost completely abandoned, which seems like sort of a letdown, given that it was such an integral topic for the first half of the course. And while Colby A is important for our continued professional growth, it seems like it was used as filler for the first half of the course. That's all I have for you. Thank you for watching my presentation, and I hope that you at least take some of these considerations in your thoughts.